All right. Hey everyone, we are interviewing Neha Govindraj, CEO and founder of Bonside. It is a way for brick and mortar businesses to acquire funding and investors and accessibility so that they can grow and scale their businesses. So Neha, thank you so much for joining. We're really excited to interview you and learn more about the business that you've created and where the platform is, but a little bit more about you before we get started. What were you doing before you started Bonside?
Yeah, and by the way, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. So prior to Bonside, I'll give you a little bit of background. I went to Northwestern in Chicago. From there, I worked at Bain Company as a management consultant for a few years. I predominantly worked in their private equity group and their consumer practice. Then from there, I did a short stint at Glossier back when they were a Series A company, and then started a business called Glowbar based in New York City, which has, we have 6 locations in and around the city now, and we do 30-minute facials there. And then I, just about a year ago, started Bonsai.
I love it. Where was the idea and the thought as you grew through, like, sounds like cosmetics. Also, I love Glossier products. I use them, shamefully, and often. And then Glowbar is definitely a predominant name that I've seen. But what inspired you, I guess, from, Bain as a consultant to then becoming a founder and then now onto the new project? What was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that I've always been a bit entrepreneurial by nature. I've always known that I wanted to be early stage and really be building things from the ground up. My early years at Bain were really for me to sort of build that business toolkit to enable myself to be able to then go and build from the ground up. The inspiration for Bonside, where that really came from, is I had a personal passion for beauty and skincare, and that's what took me to Glossier and then Glowbar. But as I was building Glowbar, my eyes really opened up to this entire world of real estate and finance. And when you're building a brick and mortar business, the early years you're really focused on materializing your concept. So thinking about what's the operating model, the labor model, the price point, et cetera. But once you get to a certain point, you've sort of built your playbook. And it's the reason why, a franchise exists. Where once you've built a playbook, you're really focused on repeating that playbook. And as a brick and mortar business, your focus actually really starts to shift to be purely real estate and finance of how do I multiply the number of doors that I have as effectively and efficiently as possible. And when I went to approach that problem, I recognized that there was a pretty big gap in the market in terms of who's actually servicing that need. When you think growth capital, you think venture capital. The two are synonymous.
Right.
And the reality of venture capital is that it's really designed for the top 1% of businesses, and typically it's usually more B2B SaaS players than it is your traditional brick and mortar venture, CPG venture, et cetera. That's not to say that the two are fully mutually exclusive, but there's a much heavier weight towards the B2B SaaS players of the world when it comes to venture capital. And so one of the things that I was surprised by was, well, if I still want growth capital, but I'm not going to venture capital to obtain it, where am I actually going to get it? Right. And what I was met with was the SBA 7A loan, which is a very arduous process, and oftentimes can't unlock the level of growth capital that you need, or emerging cash advance, which again wasn't exactly the type of capital that I was looking for. And so it started to inspire this need to design a different asset class that enabled investors to put capital into a different asset class than your typical angel investing might unlock. And so thus the idea for Bonsai was born.
Wow, there's so many things you said that I could spend hours on. What I guess, just taking it back, during the consultants phase of your life and learning kind of the different ways to scale business, and it sounds like once it gets to a certain point, there's like a repetition to it. What else did you learn? Like, what were the key indicators, or what were the key businesses that you were involved in that were like, oh, like when was the light bulb shown in your head on like when and how this is supposed to be repeated?
Yeah, so you mean kind of during my consulting days? When
Yeah,
I think the learnings from Bain were probably a little bit more focused on actually just sort of building the reps in terms of being able to grow and scale a business. I think the playbook point that you're making was more around when building a brick and mortar business, starting to recognize that there's these clear sort of key indicators for when you're ready for scale, right? So when you're building a brick and mortar business, you've got your top line revenue at a single location, so how much revenue your location's bringing in. You've got your operating cost of managing that revenue, so how much are you actually spending on that location, and then what you're resulting with is the EBITDA for that location and how profitable of a location it is. And so you're constantly fine-tuning that equation to figure out how can I really maximize revenue and maximize EBITDA. And once you've sort of figured that out and you know sort of the levers that you need to pull in order to be in a stable spot with your business, you can then start to multiply that and say, okay, I've got the formula, now let me go replicate this with subsequent locations.
I love that. I love that. There's so many brick and mortar businesses I feel like are successful in one location, and they expand and just or have a hard time kind of repeating that formula over and over again. Do you think it's like a function of is it like a learning curve? Is it access to this type of information, or is it simply like having the capital to then make that extra leap into a new business or an extension of what they've already created?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. I think it can be lack of access to capital. So oftentimes you need capital to be able to continue scaling your operations. It can also be resources, network, et cetera. So ensuring that brick and mortar business owners can be surrounded by the best in class network in the way that oftentimes B2B SaaS businesses are surrounded by best in class networks. And so it really depends on kind of the business, the business owner, what you're building, et cetera, in terms of what may or may not equip you to scale effectively. But one of the things that we're focused on at Bonside is we're really focused on cultivating a community of investors, accredited investors that are looking to invest differently. And so typically when you are an individual investing in a business, you're angel investing. And what that means is you're investing to own a percentage of the business. And at Bonside, we instead say, hey, why don't you actually invest to own a percentage of their sales? And so we're cultivating this community of investors that can invest in brick and mortar businesses in this manner and be able to just support their local economy and grow the businesses around them.
Yeah. When you say, invest in their sales, is the model, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is the model to then invest in a portion of the company, and then the company kind of buys back that investment or with the sales that they make and generate? Yeah.
So here's how I would explain it. So if you're a Bonside member and you're investing on our platform, when you make an account, you'll see different opportunities that you can buy into. And so let's say you see a cafe that has 3 locations and you go to this cafe every day. What you now have the option to do with Bonside is the cafe might be raising, $200,000, $300,000. Members will have access to buy into that and say, okay, I'm going to put in $50,000. If they put in $50,000, they have the opportunity to earn back, call it $75,000 on that $50,000 investment. And when it starts is actually the next month. So I log in, I put $50,000 into a business, and then starting next month, I might own a percentage of that business's revenues. And so every month it's a variable amount what I'm getting, but it's a fixed percentage of that business's sales. And I'm going to keep collecting that monthly payout up until I've hit my $75,000 return. Typically, most of our deals are generating their return within a 3 to 5 year period. But the faster their revenues grow, the faster you hit that 75K. And that's really where the upside lies. So it's a very different profile than angel investing, right? Where you put $50,000 in, and it's probably in a hold period for 10 years, and you're not really certain if you're actually ever going to see it again.
Right, yeah. It's awesome that it accrues and generates kind of over time. And just like what kind of traction are you now seeing? Do you have a lot of members now part of the Bonside network as investors and as businesses?
Yeah, so we are right now operating on a members-only platform just as we start to scale up our own operations. So we recently closed our first deal that was a medical spa with 9 locations. And we had a bunch of investors buy into that. And they're now collecting, monthly passive income, which is incredible. And we are actually announcing our next deal to all of our members tomorrow, which we're very excited about. It's a buzzy brand here in New York, and now all of our members who probably go and frequent that business anyway will have the opportunity to own a percentage of those sales. And so
I can't wait to learn what it is. I'm excited.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is we really operate in sort of a closed network or a private loop. I think one of the things that I faced when I was a brick and mortar business owner is I saw all of these businesses that were fundraising publicly. And it's funny because if you think about the typical venture process, most of the times businesses aren't announcing to the world that they are fundraising for
Yeah.
venture dollars.
Right.
And so it's funny
Right.
that when you're crowdfunding, all of a sudden there's this expectation that it's very mass and publicized and everyone can access your cap table.
Yeah.
At Bonsai, we run a really private network. So we have a really awesome set of accredited investors, this really awesome set of businesses, but we're not putting our businesses on blast when they're fundraising. It's really kind of kept the private loop.
Yeah.
And so we'll get you as a member on the platform so that way you will be able to see it.
Love
But
it.
we're, as we ramp up to bring on this next business, we're right now just activating a couple batches of investors to be able to
Yeah.
sort of bring in folks that we think will be excited about these deals.
That's awesome. What are the biggest risks that you see for your company right now?
I would say, I think the biggest risk in some ways already happened, right? So we're betting on brick and mortar. We really believe in the future of retail. And obviously, we just came out of a pandemic where
Yeah.
brick and mortar had to completely shut down. I think the thing that we really sort of lean on is the fact that every business that's on our platform has survived a pandemic. And so they have
Wow.
survived the biggest risk that is possible to the future of our business. And so, in some ways it's a risk, but in other ways we sort of look at that as a sign of resilience. And so, yeah, we're really bullish on the future of retail.
I love it. I love it. And I guess in long-term vision, what do you see Bonside, I guess, as a company and also the long-term effects of Bonside?
Yeah, so I think long-term vision and the long-term effects is really twofold. I think first, we really envision a future where we can really play as the financial operating system for brick and mortar businesses and really sort of solve for a gap in how they operate today. When you're operating a brick and mortar business, your first hire isn't a CFO. There's so
Right.
much that you have to get done operationally that it
Yeah.
actually takes time before you can get to a state where you can actually afford to bring on a CFO and it actually is the right financial and economic decision for you to make. However, that doesn't mean that you should have a blind eye to it beforehand. And that's where we can really sort of create our space in the market and say, hey, we're there for you. And we can
Yeah.
not only be your lending provider, but we can actually help you think about how to effectively scale. On the investor side, I think, look, one of the awesome things about what we're doing is we're bringing a new asset class and we're normalizing it in a way that no one really has before.
Yeah.
And we really believe in the power of community and what can happen when you organically get investors excited about backing really incredible, stable businesses. And I love to think about a future where we're all walking around and, we're getting our morning coffee, we're getting our afternoon
Yeah.
lunch, we're getting our evening drinks. And where every time we're walking into that business, we're saying, hey, I'm a part of this business's story. I actually
Yeah.
help them finance. And I actually am seeing that revenue on a monthly basis. And so I'm interacting and transacting on a daily basis. The incentives of like putting one foot in front of another are so aligned. It's a beautiful future to think that investing in community can really sort of come together in that way.
I love that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I go to the same places because not only do I love the patron experience, but also the service that they're providing or the food or whatever it is in terms of like what they offer. And then you come back and maybe they're not there or they've moved in locations. It's like that level of attachment to that business. I think most people want. We want to know where to take people when they're visiting or in town, or we want to know where to go consistently. Is there any place like consistently that off the top of your head you're like, this is a place I'd love to get on the platform?
Ooh, I can't say it's a single spot. What I do like to say though is we're creating the future sweet greens of the world. I think that's sort of when we think about who we want on the platform. It's the businesses that aspire to be the future sweet greens of the world, and it's the investors who aspire to be a part of that story.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And then a bonus question I always like to ask founders as they build their businesses: who or what influenced them the most? So, what books or people have influenced you the most? Kind of as whether it was early on in your career or currently, who or what is that?
Ooh, I can't say it's a single person. It's certainly not a single book. I don't think I enter books in that way. I love nuggets from different books.
Yeah.
I think it's really sort of the folks that I have grown close with over the course of my career and the network that I've built around myself. It's always been so important to me to surround myself with folks who really inspire me every day, even if it's my closest friends. I've been fortunate enough to be surrounded by just such an intelligent community every step of the way, and they've all played a major role in impacting the way I think and make decisions. And so I think the folks that are closest to me are the ones that influence me the most. And yeah, I just think everyone's crafting their own journey, and so you got to learn from everyone.
Yeah, I love that. You know, you're the second founder to bring up that sense of community and bringing people around you. And I still haven't gotten an answer. How do you build that community? Where do you go to seek out that community? Because a lot of people want that network, right? We all think about networking when we go to different events or around us professionally. But where do you start with that network? Where do you build that? Where do you ask those questions? Is it curiosity? You know, what can lead you to the network that will lead you to more success?
Yeah, that is such a great question. I think it's so unique to each person. What I'll say about myself is I actually used to be really intimidated by the concept of networking, especially in my early 20s.
Yeah.
I think the thought of, going to a crowded room where I don't know anyone or needing to raise my hand in a Q&A or things like that, they just didn't resonate with me. It wasn't my style. I didn't feel like I could build a meaningful relationship that way. I was more focused on the insecurities around it rather than the networking aspect, right? And so ultimately what I found that worked for me, and I kind of reflect back over, how has my network grown in the way that it has, it's been a matter of just taking every call and being so deeply present in every conversation you have. The conversation, even if you only have 3 calls on your calendar, show up like 200% for those calls. And those calls will unlock another 3 calls each. And so if you are hyper present in every conversation that you are already having, you will open doors naturally because people want to be around people that are present and infectious. Yeah. And so I think that, if you're not someone that can just jump into a room and just sort of like work the room, be cognizant of how you are working the rooms that you're already in.
Yeah, I love that. And last final thing, where can we find you? Where can we support Bonside? How can we get involved in maybe as an investor or get accredited as an investor? What can we do to support Bonside and its mission?
I love that question. So we're on Twitter, Bonside Inc. Our website is bonside.com. There is a join our beta button where you can sign up to get approved as an accredited investor. We are checking that list weekly. You just drop your first name, last name, a LinkedIn profile, and then we're constantly scanning that list and onboarding folks to our platform. That's where you can find us. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Neha. It was such a pleasure learning from your experience, your background, and how to support Bonside, and also how to support these businesses that we frequent every day. I'm really excited to have you on Behind Company Lines, and wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.